As the crisis in Mozambique unfolds, Portugal has the presidency of the European Council. We combine both an EU and Home Affairs perspective and a military perspective, and speak with one of the foremost experts in EU security Home Affairs, Professor Felipe Pathe Duarte, Assistant Professor and Researcher at the Nova School of Law and International Security Analyst, as well as Luís Bernardino, an Infantry Lieutenant Colonel in the Portuguese Army with the Staff Course, and currently conducting research at the Center for International Studies at the Lisbon University Institute. Good evening to you both.
Good evening.
Hello.
My first question is for you, Dr. Duarte, and it's about the EU. The EU appears to be playing a greater role as a security provider off the coast of Africa, off the coast of Libya, the Sahel, the Horn of Africa. The question now becomes, do you see an EU response in East Africa? And if so, what are the internationalization effects of the crisis, and how is this going to be politically argued in Brussels?
Thank you very much for the question. I do think so, but in a long term. And why? There are many reasons for it, but more than look at the land perspective, we need to take a look at the sea perspective, from the maritime perspective. And that's probably the main reason for a possible European Union intervention, because we should bear in mind that Cabo Delgado, first of all, Mozambique, better saying, the north of Mozambique and Cabo Delgado, it's in the entrance of the Mozambique Channel, which is a geostrategic spot and a spot crucial. Besides that, Cabo Delgado, it's near Nacala, which is a sort of an harbor, a port of deep water, probably the only deep water harbor in the east coast of Africa. And so, Cabo Delgado and Mocimboa da Praia, it's along the Mozambique Channel. It's a stretch of water between Mozambique and Madagascar, this Mozambique Channel, where about 30% of the world's oil tanker traffic passes. So this is a crucial spot. It's a quite international spot. And of course, being a quite international spot, there is no shortcut for potential targets. As more as than 5,000 oil tankers and more than a half of the total trade in goods of the 16 CADC member states transit in the channel each year. So it's a quite busy place. So the channel is not right now subject to an international policing mechanism by foreign navies, like probably you had in Bab el-Mandeb or in different places in the Indian Ocean. So for now, we only have France and South Africa and probably some US exercise in the area. And besides that, we should bear in mind also that Mayotte, which is an island about 500 kilometers from the coast of Pemba, which is the capital of Cabo Delgado, is an integral part of France and an important French military base. So, and Mayotte and the neighboring Comoros might have some gas which are connected to the gas fields that are now being developed off the coast of Mozambique. And so you have gas in the areas that are disputed, and this is a crucial spot where international trade passes. And there is a possibility of that area become just like the Horn of Africa and probably the west coast of Africa, with the insurgency coming from the land to the sea, with probably some piracy attacks. And with that, you can create disruption in sea trade. And so this is probably the main reason for a possible European intervention in the area. What are the international consequences for it? You just internationalize the conflict, and when you internationalize the conflict, you just put all the attention in the conflict, and suddenly a group or an unknown group becomes a famous group that can develop a strong insurgency in a spot that could be the future Qatar of Africa with lots of liquid gas to explore. And so the main consequences of the internationalization of the conflict, it's the internationalization of the insurgency. And when you internationalize the insurgency, you get tension, and they probably add more effect than the real capabilities, operational capabilities that the insurgents might have.
Thank you for that. Now, my next question is to Colonel Bernardino, and it is this: if Europe is to play a greater security role in Mozambique, will that be through NATO or an EU security frame?
Well, thank you for your question. First of all, I will not see that the European Union is taking a great role on the security environment in particularly in Mozambique. The Cabo Delgado problem and Mozambique situation going to be solved by regional organizations. So this is going to be the main stakeholders of the situations, as I see, and the SADC, they will play a major role in the situation. Of course, that European Union will be engaged in this situation, not only because Portugal is putting a lot of pressures and trying to organize something, kind of countries that can come together to this European Union training mission in Mozambique, but also because the European Union wants to be part of the solution and engage as a security provider and be able to create the conditions for other countries, European countries, to make a sort of contract with these international companies and be able to explore the gas and, as we know, all the others conditions. So the European Union now will be engaged in Mozambique. They will have a European Union training mission in Mozambique. Portugal is leading the situation, and the commander of this European Union is already appointed and is the first step, and some recons was already in Mozambique and Cabo Delgado for some recce activities. And now what they want to organize is be able to frame these missions, be able to engage a couple of missions. Some will be involved with troops, and another ones be involved with money, with kind of support in these missions. But it's going to be, and I would like to underline, a European Union training mission, okay? So European Union will not be engaged directly in the conflict. And for sure, as I see, NATO will not be engaged in this area as for the next couple of, I will say, months or weeks, unless the security situation will go badly and there's no other chance to solve the problem. But as I see, European Union will be engaged as a security provider, but in a training mission, as of course at the same time they're going to support financially a kind of projects to increase the economy, the local economy, trying to get the conditions for the local economy to grow. And NATO, for sure, no. And also, you're going to see a couple of individual nations in the working in this area, not only Portugal, as we know, and of course, Portugal is engaged already in training the Mozambique armed forces, but also France and US. There's already some activities, and they will be engaged in the future. So as I see, the European Union will not be the main stakeholder for the region. The main stakeholder is going to be the regional organizations. But yes, I'm quite sure that we are going to be engaged in the future and going to be engaged in a way that creates the condition for a safety region in the north part of Mozambique.
And finally, I have a question to address to you both. Should we fear state failure in Mozambique, and how serious is the threat of jihadism on the ground?
Okay, very quickly, thank you very much for the question. I think we are already feeling state failure in Mozambique. And if we take a look to the north part of Mozambique, we might see more than a sort of a terrorism problem. We can perceive that as a sort of internal conflict, almost in the wake what normally we call a secessionist civil war. So there are many reasons to justify that, because you have a different ethnicity, you different perspectives. So I think we should take a look at Cabo Delgado as the beginning, as an internal conflict, as a beginning of a civil war, result of state failure, and of course, the main reason for that civil war is a secessionist civil war, resulting from poor governance and probably the so-called resource curse. What we have there, it's open and hidden interests, legitimate and illicit situations with domestic and foreign interests. You have extorting claims to power and resources and the challenge of the newcomers. You have ethnic and religious cleavages along with myths and stereotypes concerning the others. And you have, of course, local big man interests there and resentments to unresolved grievances from different parts. So you have all the conditions and all the, we might say, all the framework analysis to understand that this is the beginning of a civil war. So with that, we are going to the next point, which is the global jihadism situation. Of course, there is an Islamic identity of that internal conflict. That Islamic identity grew with a little bit of jihadism, but I'm quite skeptical concerning the presence of the Islamic State there, or this insurgency situation as a part of the global jihadism. Why? Because first of all, they don't need global jihadism there. They don't need the support of groups such as Islamic State or Al Qaeda. They don't need it. And if you go directly to the to facts, that you can at least find a few reasons for that. The first is the theological reasons. They are Quranic. They don't accept Sunnah, for instance. And all the global jihadists linked to Al Qaeda or Islamic State, they are not Quranic. Another reason is during the Ramadan, a theological reason. During the Ramadan, they didn't attack. And normally, during the Ramadan, the global jihadists, they attack because it's a sort of a noble period. So for them, it's important to make attacks. Second reason, of course, they pledged bayat to the Islamic State in 2018. They were recognized as a part of the Islamic State in Central Africa in 2019 with the Democratic Allied Force in Congo. But they are separate, they have nothing in common. And between both of the organizations, you have more than 3,000 kilometers of pure jungle. So the communication is difficult. Third thing, it's their modus operandi. They don't use improvised explosive devices, which is a common used by global jihadists. They don't use shahid with martyrs or jihad attacks. So their modus operandi is a little bit different from the regular global jihadism attack. Second thing is their link to social media, to the Al Furqan social media, to Islamic State social media. The last main attacks in April and May, all social media information that was released by Islamic State, it was fake. The photographies, the photos, they are from different parts, not in Palma, they are from Mocimboa de Praia. And the attacks, the photos were from August 2020, not right now. So there is something wrong right there. And of course, probably the most important reason is if you listen their declarations, you can find it online through videos. All the declaration actually they are in Kimwani, the local language, which is a language from the Swahili coast. They all in their declarations, they don't talk about the global jihad. They don't talk about the caliphate. They don't talk about an Islamic state. They just want to attack Maputo. It's the central government which they want to attack. So my thesis here is that this is an internal conflict. Of course, it's important an Islamic and jihadi identity. I do think that probably global jihadism, they can take advantage on it, of course, okay. But their main reason, their main objective, it's not a global jihadization, it's mostly focused on the government. Of course, in middle long term, they can change that and go directly to global jihad. There is that possibility, but for now, I understand that as more than a global jihadism problem, a pure internal problem with sort of a sort of an Islamic and jihadi identity.
I agreed with a couple of ideas that Felipe shared with us, but let me say that the first part of the questions, and thank you for the questions, is that the Mozambique is a failed state. Well, we know there are problems in the north part of Mozambique. We know that the state is not already present. We know that there are some clashes and there are some economical difficulties on the regions. And we also know that there are this problem with the gas, and we know that the situation, it's a mix of a complexity of causes that brings these security problems that we are facing now. But I don't see as a failed state as you see in Mali, or you see in Somalia, or you see in Republic Centrafricana. There's a possibility it can happen. It might be a deterioration of the situation on the ground, and it might come to a problem that can involve a bigger number of jihadists and a bigger number of problems. But in the moment, I see as a possibility, but not really as we face in other areas normally in Africa, like Mali or Somalia. The problems in Somalia or in Mali are too much bigger than we see in the north part of Mozambique. Anyway, it's a possibility, and it might be a beginning of a problem. Let's say it's more a beginning. It's more a kind of problem that can grow and can create a failed states in the north part of Mozambique and create the conditions to develop this jihadi group and also these dynamics that we are facing and we are seeing now as a starting point. The second part of the questions, I follow more or less the same that Felipe explained to us. I don't see any relations with the global jihads. I don't see a kind of big organizations that creates the conditions as we see in other parts of Africa, like in Mali or in Somalia, for examples. It's indeed a tactical of attack in small scale. I don't see that the moment that the objective is Maputo, is maybe the objective is Pemba, and Pemba is a strategic objective because they were trying to reach the capital of Cabo Delgado regions, and from that create more or less that control of the situation of the full part of the country. But Maputo, it's a little bit far too much as I see. Anyway, these small groups, because we are talking about small groups, now they just make like what we call operational pause. And they just disappear and they just come to another cross of the border, maybe to the Tanzanian part of the border. But if this security situation remains like this, and if the international stakeholders create the conditions to increase the security level of the regions, we might have the control of the situation and you might create the conditions to increase the development of the situation, of the economic situation on the ground. So I fully agreed with Felipe that is nothing to do with the global jihad. The tacticals is small scale, is a small attack, some fake news, taking advantage of this media, because I also agreed that this internationalization of the conflict brings more news, brings more attentions for these small groups, and a small attack became a big problem for the country, a big problem for the regional security. So what we're going to see now, it's maybe in the next future, a couple of small events, a couple of small fights, with when these small groups get the conditions to make a sort of small attacks, but to get the conditions and take by surprise the Mozambique armed forces, as I see, in the next couple of months, going to be a little bit more difficult, because now everybody is putting more attention, putting more eyes on the ground, and it's a little bit more difficult for these good groups to get these conditions to attack. Because another point that maybe is important to underline is that this is not only a jihad. This is a mix of a jihad with the banditism group, with the smugglers, with young people that take advantage of the situations, and they just get the conditions to get some money, to get something to survive. This is, of course, a jihadist problem, but is not completely the framework of the situation, because inside the situation we have to understand what is the problem inside with the society. And part of these young men that are fighting, they don't know nothing about jihad. They just get some money, and in the end of the day, what they want is a couple of dollars. So we have to take care of this situation, and it's a frame of a jihad war, a regional jihad war, with some connections with Al-Shabaab or with other groups in Africa, but the big majority of these groups are composed by young people, and because they don't have nothing to do, they just joined in these groups, and they just attack and they rob and they do this kind of things. So, and then my last comment is looking ahead and looking for the future. We have to take in considerations that inside Mozambique also the dynamics putting in place by the regional organizations like the SADC will increase the security conditions on the north. European Union also, as we talked in the last questions, going to play also a role in this improvement of the situation. France will also have to be a little bit more dynamic, engaging in creating the conditions to the exploration of the natural gas in the north part of Mozambique. And that it's part of this dynamic. And let's see what the stakeholders are able to do, and let's see what is this result on the ground in the next couple of weeks. And that's all. Thank you very much.
To be understood, I'm not saying that Mozambique is a failure state, not at all. What I said is that Cabo Delgado is the result of the failure of Mozambique state, which is a little bit different, even though in a long term, just like Colonel Bernardino said, probably we might experience some failure, more failure of the Mozambique state, probably. But I'm not saying that Mozambique is a failure state, not, of course, not just like Mali or Somalia, but Cabo Delgado is the result of a failure of the state. Second thing, they don't want directly to attack Maputo, of course. For them, from a tactical perspective and strategical perspective, is to attack Pemba, of course. But normally they talk about Maputo as Maputo as the government. So for them, it's to attack the government rather than defend global jihad or have a sort of a international perspective, just like you have in global jihad with the far enemy and so on. So for them, their main target is newsy government. And so that's why, just like Colonel Bernardino said, this is more an internal problem with a little bit of organized crime, with a little bit of local criminals, international criminals. And you should bear in mind that Cabo Delgado, it's a specific spot where you have lots of traffics there, human traffic, exotic wood traffic, gyms traffic. So it's a particular zone. It's from a geographic perspective, of course. That's what I want to say.
Let's see what the future holds. Thank you both for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.